There's a lot to do ahead. We have to fuel ourselves to get there. Fuel your light.
Fuel your fire.
Fuel the things that give you joy.
It's time to make some room in your headspace. This is Words Matter with Amy Guth.
Here's the thing with sitting down to do a podcast. Sometimes I don't actually know what anyone wants to hear from me about anything. And that's not even a dig at myself or anything like that. It's just like, it's a reminder to me about the stuff that I work with people on formally and informally, and the stuff I talk about all the time about knowing your value to others. And when I talk about knowing your value to others, it's not like a moral failing if you don't. It's, it's hard to notice your hair growing because you see you every day, right? It's like that. Like, it's hard to see yourself completely clearly because you know yourself in all the ways and you've known yourself your whole life. And so it's difficult sometimes to go, is that thing that I've been thinking about valuable to others? Or is that just some weird shit that I think about all the time? And I think another layer of that that's even harder is that the thing that is very easy and obvious to you that frustrates the shit out of you because you're like, why is this not easy and obvious for everyone else? That's a hint that it's your superpower, actually. That thing that's so easy and obvious to you is not easy and obvious to everyone else. And that's a superpower of yours. And that's a gift you have to offer others. But it's damn hard to articulate it because it's like so obvious to you. You're like, well, how do I know that thing? How am I so sure about this thing? And you know what? Some people are very, very good at seeing the hidden thing and naming the thing. And so you're able to articulate that from yourself and go, okay, this is a thing that I know that I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of, because it feels kind of arrogant sometimes to claim that for yourself. But some of us are that way, not the arrogant way. Some of us are people who see the hidden stuff, right? A superpower of mine is that I see a narrative out in the world and I kind of go, well, wait a minute, hang on. That's you're missing a piece of that. And I think that's a big part of why this podcast is called Words Matter, because it's often language related for me when I'm like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's a great example. And it's like an easy example. The difference in saying return to work versus return to in-office work or in-person work. Two different things. Return to work implies you aren't doing shit if you're not at the office. And that gets into leadership through surveillance kind of shit, that leadership through proximity, really, right? That gets into that kind of management style, which I don't think we would have said pre-pandemic how much of that we had. And then it's so clear after, like, hey, did y'all pay me to come sit in the seat for 8 hours? Did you pay me to do this thing that I know how to do? Oh, turns out you pay me to do this thing that I know how to do. And also you need to watch me doing it to prove I do it, even though I turn in work on time, right? So there's a lot there. There's a lot there, and words matter about it.
In other news,
I am delightedly psyched that What We Do in the Shadows is back on for another season.
We are going to visit Guillermo in his new home.
I want you to have my scientific devices. That there is my anal speculum. Seen some action, but you're more than welcome to it.
That did my heart so much good in leading up to the election, and just all the frustrating narratives that were present there. And obvious ones and not obvious ones. There was just so much frustrating about this election. And that's not what I'm getting into today. What I'm getting into is finding pockets of joy. And that show gives me pockets of joy so very much because it's so damn funny.
So, you let me sleep for 50 years? What have you been doing?
Every day I am learning the dark arts of corporate America. TGI, FML, NGL, lol.
And there's so much in that show from earlier seasons that are just like such source material for me that I find myself saying over and over and over again, and I'm delighted by. And I think that's the name of the game right now. is fuel your light, fuel your fire, fuel the things that give you joy. And there's a lot to do ahead, but we have to fuel ourselves to get there. In 2016, I was at a Hillary campaign event in an official capacity as a journalist, and I was getting audio from people. And there was a woman that I spoke to, and I checked in with her a couple of times during the evening. At first, I was like, asking random people there, how are you feeling? And there was a lot of optimism. And then as the night started to change, there was less optimism. And I circled back with this woman and I said, how are you feeling now? And she said, look, I don't know. I can't predict the future. But I know that either way, no matter how the election goes, I know that tomorrow, our path will be obvious. The work that we need to do will be clear, and there'll be work to do either way. And I think that's true now. And also true is part of that work is caring for yourself. I think there was so much burnout and frustration and scramble early in the first Trump administration because we hadn't seen anything like that. Like even people that supported the guy had just never quite seen a White House administration functioning like that. And I think the hard lesson taken there was you have to fuel yourself. You have to fuel your fire. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to fuel your tank. All the cliches in the world about keeping yourself full all apply, and they apply now. There's a lot happening in the world, and some of it is fucking frustrating. A lot of it is fucking frustrating. A lot of it, I feel like, is just yelling at a brick wall. Like some of it makes no sense, and a lot of it is very hypocritical and counterintuitive, and it's frustrating. And I know a lot of families have been impacted, and that's a whole other topic. But I think the answer is there's a lot of work to do. There was a lot of work to do before the election, right? There's always been a lot to do. As long as injustice exists, there's work to do. But now the path is clear. Now we know the work that needs to be done, at least in the immediate time. And to do it, we're going to have to care for ourselves and each other. And we're going to have to keep our tanks full. And if watching a show about vampires living in Staten Island keeps your tank full, fucking A, people. Go do that.
I must put the interests of America first.
I may have sleep hypnotized Nandor into Richard Nixon.
Suck it to me.
Here's another thing that I want to talk about. And this, I'm not looking for feedback per se. I'm not looking for advice. I have, my health is in good hands and I'm on top of it. But I just want to name a thing, and that is the bananas kind of shit show and strange time of transition that is perimenopause. And, puberty gets all the attention for being the weirdest and most transformational time. I don't think that's right. I think I'm going to say perimenopause is just as weird, if not weirder, than puberty. Because at least in puberty, you're a kid and your brain is not fully formed, and so you don't know what the fuck's happening. When you're going through perimenopause, your brain is fully formed, and also you don't know what the fuck's happening, and you've lived long enough to feel like you have, a reasonable amount of agency over your life, and all of a sudden you're like, what is this? Everything I thought I knew about my body and my life and how it worked doesn't work now. And there's lots of fascinating data that whatever, we can get into another time, but there's fascinating data. And I love Google Scholar. I love to just lurk in Google Scholar and just read the body of academic literature because that's my jam and I love academic stuff. But there's a fascinating amount of research about some of the things that estrogen props up for us cognitively, physically, physiologically, cardiovascularly, like all this stuff that is so estrogen dependent. And like a lot of it boils down to like strategies that you used to cope with things in your life suddenly like don't fucking work as estrogen starts to go away. So like these strategies for how to run your life are suddenly like, yeah, that doesn't work at all. Oh, that way I could multitask. Yeah, that doesn't work at all now. Sleeping? Nope, not a thing, not a thing. Until you have to like relearn all this stuff. Even like dietary things. And I have a lot of food sensitivities and I have a chronic autoimmune issue. So like I'm kind of in my own space on that. And I'm really hyper vigilant about my diet as a result of just as part of my self-care for that. But like that's suddenly become a moving target and it's shifted throughout the process of perimenopause. But where I'm going with all that is this. And this could be generational, right? Because those of us who are Gen X, our moms are boomers or older. Here's all the information we got was like, menopause is difficult, you'll be a bitch. Like that is the extent. I had to go back to my mom and be like, how old were you? How did it go? And like, even then it was like she was keeping family secrets. And I'm really psyched to see on social media a lot of women my age and a little bit younger talking about perimenopause, especially women that are just now hitting it. They're like, what the fuck is happening? Because I know it felt very sudden for me too. Like my period changed, my kind of emotional equilibrium. Like menopause has the rap of like, oh, you're just a giant bitch or you're sobbing. And it was not that at all. Actually, like suddenly felt a lot of anxiety and a lot of like, felt really tender. It wasn't like outward crying at the Hallmark ad. It was just like, I just felt like more tender about stuff and more sentimental about things for a little while. And then that shifted. And then I was like, why is there a narrative that we get more conservative and docile as we get older? I feel like flipping a table in like systemic rage. And to me, it felt like a great deal of power, of personal power and agency that really like stepped up in a huge way for me. So that part was really positive. But all this stuff, just like what you know as your normal routine for decades is suddenly like real different. You kind of know, oh, PMS treats me this way, my period is this way, the week after is this way, and all that is different and all of it is gone and all of it's just like you have to relearn it, and then when you get the hang of it, it's like different again. It's like it's just weird, and I am so heartened by people talking about it openly. I love that so very, very much because it was like this like secret. You know, I think there was like a lot of shame or something, secrecy or shame or both for boomer age women of like, that's just private lady part stuff. We don't talk about that around the men folk, but whereas like, I think Gen Xers, my age, and certainly people younger are not at all flinching to talk about that kind of thing. And so I love that because when it first hits you, you don't know what's happening. You're just like, oh, I have a lot of anxiety and I'm not sleeping. And here's the thing, like the medical establishment, unless you have like an integrative health practitioner in your life, which I do, and I think they're amazing, and I hope everyone finds a way to one, and that I believe everyone deserves a really wonderful doctor who listens and considers your whole life and your whole body. But unless you have that, like you get a lot of dismissed kind of stuff. Like as women, we're already experiencing a ton of medical gaslighting for everything, right? Like I know somebody that went to the ER with what turned out to be a gallbladder issue, and she was sent away because they were like, it's probably a menstrual cramp. And she was like, I know where my fucking uterus is, and this is not a menstrual cramp. This is something else. And later, when it became more dire, it ended up not being a menstrual cramp. So it's like we already experienced so much medical gaslighting and so much questioning our pain and questioning our reality of, oh, that's not what you're experiencing. Yes, it is. This is what I'm experiencing. I've been in this body my whole life. So when you're used to that environment and everything starts to change on you, it's frustrating. And when you know, like, the medical establishment is not helping you, you do have to find the right partner. And there's plenty of doctors that specialize in perimenopause and menopause that are really helpful, that can really just help you make some tweaks. Because all the stuff, I'm telling you, all the stuff that made sense to you in your 20s and 30s, all the stuff you learned about your body by your mid 40s is like, wait, that truth is not a truth anymore. It might be a truth again later. It might not, but it changes. And so when it first hits you, and it, like, for me, I was just not sleeping more than 2 hours, and I was just consumed with anxiety. All of a sudden, it was stunning to me. Like, it really kind of shook me up for a couple of years. Which is all just to say that I'm very psyched that people are talking about it right now, because I think it's important, because that's going to normalize it. Because again, words matter. But like, the more that we talk about a thing and take it out of shadow, secret, women folk chatter, like, the better it's going to go for all of us, because then it's going to make sense and people are going to know what the fuck is going on with them. I mean, it's the same thing as puberty. Think about it. You would never dream of just like not telling a young person to expect their period, and then their period happens and you just go, oh, well, that's just part of being a woman. Bye. No, like, most of us anyway got some kind of explanation, a little more than that. And so the fact that our bodies are changing again, and we're given so little information, is shameful. So the more we talk about it, the more open we are about it, I just think it's going to be better and better. I endorse all the perimenopause and menopause discussion, because it's weird, man. It's a weird time. And anytime I see any woman online talking about it, I will weigh in and be like, first of all, you're not crazy. I mean, you might be, but not because of this. Like, you are normal, and the things that you are concerned about are normal, and it looks different for everybody. And like, what happens to one person will be something totally different for another. And what happens this year might look very different the following year, and it's going to change. And it feels like being uprooted from your own body for a few years. And then it starts to settle and make sense again. And then I'll probably change again on the other side of it. But nonetheless, point being, I'm here for all the perimenopause and menopause talk, because it's fucking important. It really is. And for as much data is emerging right now, speaking of Google Scholar and academic bodies of work, for as much information is emerging right now about how little clinical trials have included women, it's essentially important. It's so important. And what I'm talking about is there is data talking about, oh, well, women were not included in all these clinical trials because results changed week by week through their monthly cycle. Well, yeah, motherfucker. That should tell you something, that perhaps hormones have a huge influence on health. Perhaps it's very important to include women in studies instead of just, we need some stable results that do the same thing every day. Maybe test men and women separately. Maybe you do need to look for hormonal changes in the population, regardless of their gender, right? Regardless of what's going on. Like, you need to look for those hormonal changes in people if that has a bearing on their health, which, hello, obviously it does. So the more we talk about that kind of thing, the more normal it will be, the more it will not be some crazy ass don't talk about it in front of the men folk nonsense, because I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I am way the fuck over that. Way over that.
Words Matter is fabricated and nurtured inside the mind of Amy Guth with marginally consequential assistance from the Sonic Mice at EarSight Studios. Remember, when you can't talk it out, write it out. Subscribe to Amy's Writing Prompts for Weird Times at amyguth.com.
Okay, I'm saying medaglia. What are you claiming that it is?
Medaglia.
Because it said GLA.
Yes.
Right, but I don't think anybody in Chicago or anywhere in the Midwest is saying medaglia. They're
Right.
saying medaglia.
Right, because chucha american.